is our General Secretary. He'll be reading two statements, after which you'll be taking questions. Yes?
Morning, everyone. My apologies for the late start. The first statement reads as follows. The People Progressive Party calls on the Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM, to ensure that the most competent and suitable persons are recruited to work on polling day. With the President's announcement that he will call general and regional elections in early 2050, this process is expected to take precedence and to gain momentum. The PPP would like to stress the importance of quality training of these persons so as to avoid a repeat of problems during the 2011 elections. At the 2011 elections, a GECOM trained presiding officer working in a traditional PPP support area, either intentionally or due to poor selection and training, failed to stamp 19 ballots with the 6-digit official stamp, thus rendering those ballots rejected. This individual took away the democratic right of 19 hard-working Guyanese who have their country at heart. Certainly, we do not wish a repeat of this unfortunate experience. Further, there were several instances in Georgetown where presiding officers refused to accept PPP candidates at polling stations. The PPP urges GECOM to ensure that these individuals and others who acted unprofessionally in 2011 are not selected again, and those chosen now must act impartially at all times in the execution of their duties on polling day. GECOM is obligated to the nation to make public the names and details of all selected polling day staff for the purpose of public vetting. This will serve to improve the confidence of the Guyanese people in GECOM and maintain their own integrity. Also, the voting population must be informed of changes to polling day procedures and practices and to publish in the public domain instructions and regulations which polling day staff must adhere to on E-Day. This will enhance the integrity of the process and prevent malpractices. The PPP is convinced that there were manipulations and distortions of instructions and communication to polling day staff in 2011. One would have drawn the conclusion that different training seminars were conducted with some polling day staff as opposed to others. Moreover, the PPP calls on GECOM to involve all major political stakeholders in reviewing polling places used in the 2011 elections and to make firm decisions. With the establishment of many new housing schemes and the movement of people into existing schemes, a total review of polling places is needed. The party has made representation time and again to GECOM with regards to persons being asked to travel long distances to polling stations, especially in the hinterland and riverine communities. Experience has taught us that in these instances, people are not inclined to travel the distance or cannot afford to do so. The PPP wishes to remind GECOM that it is the constitutional right of all Guyanese, be it on the coast or the hinterland, to be afforded the opportunity to vote, and GECOM is the vehicle to make that possible. The issues highlighted by the PPP are not new to the chairman, and members of the commission, and officers at the Secretariat. These issues had formed part of discussions at a post-2011 retreat, which was convened by the chairman and members of GECOM in 2012. A quick look at the report of that retreat would clearly remind all at GCOM about these issues. Hence, there should be no difficulty in GCOM taking the action proposed by the party. The PPP over the last several months has single-handedly worked with GCOM to ensure that issues surrounding the transparency of the electoral process is free from discrepancies, while the opposition parties choose to lead a nasty campaign against the PPP for highlighting legitimate concerns that are affecting our people. The PPP wishes to reiterate that it will continue to make representation on behalf of the Guyanese people to ensure the 2015 general and regional elections are free and fair. The next statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party has taken note of the recent scurrilous attacks by the APNU against the party in connection with its ongoing community outreach meetings throughout the country. The party wishes to emphasize that from these attacks, the APNU appears wedded to the view that the best way to defend itself is to attack others. This modus operandi has been the practice of the PNC, now camouflaged as the APNU, over many, many years, but were particularly noticeable during the 1962 to 64 period in our country's history. Now, in a desperate effort to rebrand itself, the PNC cum APNU pretends to be a paragon of virtue and either seeks to lecture or attack those who oppose its hardline and ideological postures. The PNC's refusal to engage in fruitful and meaningful dialogue with the PPPC administration has been from time immemorial one of its foundation hallmarks. In this regard, we wish to make reference to the engineered split in the PPP in 1955, when the founder leader of the PNC, Forbes Burnham, rather than settling for a key leadership post in the party, sought to oust Dr. Jagan as the leader of the PPP. Later, during the independence talks between 1961 and 1964, Burnham refused to settle on the terms under which independence would be granted to the then British Guyana. The PNC, now led by Granger, again refused to agree on a political settlement with a view to forming a coalition government in 1964. During the 1974 to 76 period, the PNC, now led by Granger, jettisoned the inter-party talks on the ground that the Mirror newspaper published an editorial rightfully criticizing the PNC. Later, when the PPP proposed the establishment of a National Patriotic Front and a National Front government, the PNC, now led by Granger, rejected the proposal on the ground that the majority could not join with the minority lest history be written differently. Much later, and prior to the demise of their founder leader, following another attempt on inter-party talks in the search for a political solution, Desmond Hoyt torpedoed those talks. The PNC has never displayed a genuine disposition to enter into meaningful dialogue with the PPP. It has always sought to dominate and bully its way to achieve its goals, as it did in connivance with the AFC when they took control of the 10th Parliament by seizing the Speaker and Deputy Speaker positions, as well as the chairmanship of all the parliamentary bodies. In the case where it could not take control, that is, the Parliamentary Oversight Committee of the Security Sector, it refused to cooperate and left that committee to perish. For the PNC to now claim to be self-righteous and sanctimonious, having regard to its treacherous, unprincipled, and undemocratic history of riding roughshod over the fundamental rights of the Guyanese people and rigged elections, is to make a mockery of what all decent and reasonable Guyanese stand for. All the claptrap about, quote, dangerous race baiting and vote buying, end of quote, quote, misuse of state resources for electoral campaigning, end of quote, and quote, dirtiest elections campaign ever, end of quote, will not resonate or gain traction, primarily because the source from which these cynical concoctions originate have no credibility or respect among Guyanese. If Mr. Granger is so concerned about misuse of state resources, he should abandon and return all the resources he is currently using, as well as the benefits he receives from the state as leader of the opposition. Finally, the PPP has taken seriously the threats constantly leveled against the leaders of the PPP in general and its General Secretary in particular. The PPP will not be cowed by these threats. The party will record and report all such threats to the relevant authorities. End of quote. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, there are two press statements. Now we'll open for questioning.
Yes, Minister Indiana Chronicle, in your second statement you mentioned attacks by the opposition. One of the criticisms raised last week was that the PPP is engaging in race baiting during its outreaches. Can you respond to that?
I have no idea what Mr. Granger is speaking about. I believe that this is just an attempt to raise a red herring because there's nothing much for them to hang on to. So I do not know what Mr. Granger is referring to.
And how do you respond to the AFC's proposal for a pro-democracy alliance in which you'll work with APNU and persons who are dissatisfied with the PPP?
I think it's a forthright proposal. The AFC is a forthright party. They're seeking to just big up themselves. I think he's trying to replace Mr. Granger as the leader of the opposition. And the APNU better watch out for the AFC, because the AFC might very well find itself, the APNU might very well find itself being replaced by the AFC if they don't watch out for their constituents. So all this talk about leading an alliance, well, let's wait to see what will be the nature of this alliance, because when they talk about frying and jailing persons in the opposition, I think that's the way they describe it. That they will fry, fire, and jail members of the opposition, which sounds members of the government, which sounds rather similar to what Mr. Granger has said before, you know, which he was very critical of. I see a very, you know, it sounds to me like we're going back to a situation similar to the McCarthyite period in the 1950s in the United States, a period of witch hunting of persons, kangaroo trials taking place, and witch hunting and so forth. So it's good to know that the opposition is exposing their cloven hoofs about what their intentions are, were they to even get one foot in the door of government.
My final question, do you expect a fallout for the PPP given that the president has not named a specific date for general elections?
No, I don't expect no fallout at all. Some people said, you know, some people described it in different ways, but I think the president was very tactful, you know, in taking that approach. You know, politics is all about taking advantage of opportunities and taking advantage of space and using time to your advantage. Well, if we have political neophytes in the opposition, I can't help them. Maybe they ought to take a cue from the PPP to see how we conduct our politics. But it's all about winning and not losing. And every step of the way you have to be a winner, not a loser. And we can see from the track record over the past few months that the opposition have been sore losers. And they cry foul when they lose. They attack when they lose. But it's just that they have been, you know, outfoxed, outsmarted by the those who hold the reins of power.
Yes, Kaichu.
Abena Rockcliffe, Fetching News. Good morning. Mr. Roy, a follow-up to Vanessa's question. In your answer, you said that the APNU has to watch out because AFC might become the main opposition. Is that
Might displace them.
might displace them indeed?
Uh-huh.
So is this an indication from what you have been looking at, your groundwork? Is it that you've seen AFC gaining grounds? You're identifying more supporters for the AFC that they can actually, that you think that they can actually replace the APNU?
Well, that's for the APNU to look out for, not me.
No, but you said it. Is
I
it-
may have said, I can say a lot of things.
So that's not from a credible
I
standpoint?
can say a lot of things. It depends on how you interpret me. Read my lips.
Okay.
All I'm saying is that the APNU better watch out. Because even in today's newspaper, I saw Mr. Greenwich, speaking very highly of Mr. Ramjatan's call for leadership of an alliance. So something is rotten in the Kingdom of Denmark.
It's fair.
And the Denmark, for me, is somewhere on Hatfield Street, Stabroek, behind the Parliament.
Okay, another question, please. On Saturday, when asked about the PPP's use of state resources in the campaign, the president asked, "Do you want us to walk?" Essentially signaling that the only resources that PPP has to use is that of the state.
No. I would caution there, Number one, I wasn't there. Number two, I would caution you about interpreting what the president said and coming to ask me, based on your interpretation, what I think about what the president said
not
about
what you think
Ministers'
about what the
Party. No,
president
please, I would not venture there.
I would like to know, does the PPP
I
has...
would not venture there.
Okay, a reformation. Does the PPP have vehicles and enough to carry out its campaign, its election campaign?
We have always been able to carry out our campaign successfully. We have always been able, vehicular, land and water transport has never been an impediment to us waging a successful campaign.
So why is the party using state resources?
Why is the party using state resources? I can only repeat what the president said by asking that rhetorical question.
So that means there are no other resources?
The
for
party uses state resources. The PPP uses state resources. I'm not so sure whether you're on the right track there.
Okay, I will move on. Yesterday in APN News column, they pointed out a series of quotes.
The PPP uses its own resources. If you have any evidence to the effect that the PPP at Rob Street, New Amsterdam, or any other part of the country is using state resources to do PPP work, well, I would say look to the other side. Because Mr. Granger is also using state resources given to him by the Parliament.
Constitutionally, yeah. It's
Are we doing so
allocated,
unconstitutionally?
But the PPP, anyway.
You better be careful
move
lest you
on,
get
sir.
yourself tied up, like the APNU and the AFC. This thing seems to be rather contagious,
Sir, final question. In relation to the racial campaign that the APNU has accused your party of, yesterday in its column, published in Country News, it pointed out a number of quotes suggesting that these are the racial remarks used in the campaign. Would you and your committee look at these and try to, in the
My
future...
committee? Which committee are you referring to?
Your executive committee, don't you guys look at these things?
Guys?
No, all right. You mentioned Tribal Committee, you announced the committee to hear when
The
you talked
disciplinary,
about this. Yeah, that's
yeah,
correct.
as well.
I announced what committee?
And disciplinary committee for the party, at the
Uh-huh.
party level,
Uh-huh.
that would investigate complaints against party members and all of that. You
Okay.
talk about that,
Yes, I did.
yeah, well,
But complaints from who?
Any source?
No, I never said any source.
You
I
said-
never said any
you said
source.
from the members of the public can complain and all of that.
I never said any source. But anyway, what's your question, may I ask? May you continue with your line of question, please?
Yes, sir. I'm trying to find out if the party will be looking at this and seeking to correct this and avoiding using words that
You-
can be interpreted to be racial slurs.
You are implying
Uh-huh.
that what the opposition has said is correct. Implied or implicit in your statement, which is not necessarily a question, is that the opposition is justified in what they're saying. You're running with that
They
justification
quoted you.
to me.
They quoted.
You're
Not-
running with that justification to me. The first thing is that we haven't made any decision whether that accusation or allegation or claim is justified.
Would you be looking to see if it's justified?
No, we don't want to pay attention to Mr. Granger and his querulous claims. Let him continue to, say what he has to say.
Sorry, I'd like to talk to you about the GCOM and the disenfranchisement of PPP supporters in 2011 due to the untrained staff, and ask you whether the people who were disenfranchised were only PPP members and supporters and activists.
They were only PVP supporters.
If only those were, the votes get spoiled.
Well, based on the trends, when we make reference to PPP strongholds, in the same way as the media would make reference to the AFC, this is how they would style it, that the AFC has made inroads into PPP strongholds and the quarantine. We wouldn't say that, but the media would say that. They would write about embattled PPP, fighting the AFC, and stuff like that. Now, when we speak about these trends, we are referring mainly to votes at PPP strongholds.
Now, you ain't got any evidence that such an action was widespread that it could have affected people in other...
Put it this way, Adam, I know what you're trying to do. You are very, smart guy. In this sense. Now, you would want to ask somehow, or to write to say, how would Rohi know that those people, even though they're in a PPP stronghold, voted for PPP? That it may not be all those people in the PPP stronghold would vote for PPP. They may vote for AFC, they may vote for APNU. We wouldn't know that either. We wouldn't know that either because we wouldn't see what's in the ballot box or what's on the ballot papers. But we know from the historical trends, which is a PPP stronghold, which is a PNC stronghold. We know about AFC stronghold, we know the AFC poaching. They poaches on the PPP and the PNC. That's what they do. Now, that's why I said the AP and you better look out for the AFC because I think they targeting this time the AP and you supporters. The last time they targeted our support, but you know what has happened? They have found that our supporters are coming back home. Whereas there's a lot of dissatisfaction within the AP and you, Linden is a case in point, and many others. So they're seeking to cash in on the disenfranchised, on the disenchantment in APNU strongholds, and obviously take advantage of the difficulties that Mr. Granger is experiencing within his leadership. I mentioned Mr. Greenwich, for example, writing in laudatory terms, you see, praising Mr. Ramjatan's initiative. Now, I don't know whether breakaway faction is, in the making within the APNU. It may very well be so. So wherever there's smoke, there's fire. As you would know from the old people would say that. So let's keep our fingers crossed and see what happens.
Yeah, any other questions?
Mr. O'Leary, Mark's Capital News. Are you very afraid of the AFC? You're spending a lot of time and resources on discrediting them, for want of a better word. 2 press releases alone in the past week. What is your fear?
Fear? F-E-I-R, you mean, or F-E-A-R? Or F-A-R-E?
F-E-A-R.
Okay, because my fear is the biggest amount of votes for the elections. That's the fear that we're looking after, like you fear of food before you. But Nothing of the sort. We were told, and we are hearing from time to time, that we are fearful of holding elections or going to the polls.
But you didn't even want
We're
that.
hearing another expression of fear, this time in relation to the AFC. And another time we heard another expression of fear in relation to the APNU. Well, let me say here and now that the PPP is probably the strongest party in Guyana right now, and in addition to that, it's the most battled, hardened party in this country. The APNU have never taken the blows like the PPP. The AFC have never taken the blows like the PPP. We are tough and ready and always prepared. So this question of being afraid of going to elections, it's a non-issue. This question of being fearful of the AFC, we've done our work. From 2011 to now, we have done our work, so we need not fear anything of that sort. In respect to the APNU, we have done our work as well, and we will continue to do our work. Our work is a work in progress until elections results are announced.
Mr. Rohit,
So there will always be this spectrum created by the leaders of those parties and some sections of the media that we are fearful of elections or we are fearful of one party or the other. You know, could be they're fearful of us too. Don't you think? I've never heard anybody, I don't know if you ask them those questions at the press conferences, if the APNU is fearful of the PPP or if the AFC is fearful of the PPP. But I would like to throw that question too.
Mr. Rohit, 2 weeks ago, you didn't even want to hear or mention the word Moses at your press conference. And this
I've never called his
release
name though.
on him.
I call the AFC name, but not
You used the press release to say that Moses Nagamutu was unpopular.
press release.
Yeah.
It's different from utterings.
So you're the head of the party, no? Or you're being voted on?
All right, let's move on.
I want
Next.
to ask you a question on your statement, Mr. Rohit. One of your concerns about the placement of polling stations is that people can't afford to go and vote. Really, if people can't afford to go to vote, they wouldn't be turning up at the poll if they can muster up the passage to vote for the PPP.
No. What we're saying is this. The basic question or the fundamental issue is that polling stations must not be placed as a political weapon far away from those constituents who are perceived to be favorably disposed to voting for the PPPC. This has happened in the past. You all are very young people, and I have no problem with
We
that.
just read them.
Pardon?
We just read.
Well, you may read, but I've never heard those kind of things being written about. I've never read those things being written about. The only man that might make en passant reference to these things would be Mr. Adam Harris. And even when he does so in a very clever piece of writing with a pen.
Sir, I want to take you back to the fact that PNC has never been serious, you said, about talks with the PPP, and you went back to the Burnham-Jagan split in 1955, and you came all the way to 2011.
Well, I'm sure you will appreciate I have to put it in context. Historical and contemporary. You know, because for me to simply make a declaratory statement that they're not interested based on the recent experience vis-a-vis the no confidence motion, that such a statement might have been misconstrued had it not been put in a historical context. And I think of all the people gathered here, apart from myself and to some extent my colleague here, would know about what I'm referring to. I'm not against what my good friend there is saying about reading, because that's the way we know history. But as I said before, and I don't want to necessarily repeat it again, it's in the writing which we draw, from the writing which we draw conclusions, with one's acquaintance with certain historical facts.
So just on that point, Mr. Rohi, then, if you knew that the APNU, PNC, whoever they be, were not committed to any genuine negotiations, then your prorogation of Parliament was then just a bluff to buy time. So that we reason them to conclude.
But just a what?
A bluff, you just want to buy time, just as maybe people are saying about the president's announcement of an election date.
No, how could you say that? We had an objective reality in front of us, which was a no confidence motion. That was not a figment of anyone's imagination. There was a no confidence motion on the order paper in the Parliament during the life of the 10th Parliament. It was there. The government had options before it on what to do, how to handle this no confidence motion. So to say that that was just a ploy or whatever it might be to gain time, I do not necessarily agree with that. The government had to exercise options. It exercised the option in that respect in regard to the, prorogation of the Parliament, with which the opposition, as they would say in local Guyanese parlance, get vexed. They were vexed about it. They were upset about it. They were annoyed about it. They protested about it. But that was a constitutional option that the government exercised. Here again, the government exercised another option, this time not necessarily constitutional, but more tactical, which was to announce that by a certain time frame, a date will be announced. Now, I've seen an editorial by the Starbuck News in today's newspaper, almost taking over a whole page.
You read it?
Pardon?
I didn't read it.
No, well, I'm commenting on it. I read it. Sometimes you read things and you ask which I don't read. Well, I read that editorial, and I was somewhat taken back by the argument that they advanced there, because they took us all to Israel, where the Prime Minister announced a date sometime in March, and they took us on a world tour. Sweden, all over they took us, around the world, in less than 80 days. They took us. And they said, well, look, if Israel could do it, if Sweden could do it, if this country could do it, why Guyana can't do it? Well, the thing is that we have a completely different reality in our country. And every country, all the politicians in the various countries adopt different tactical and strategic approaches to dealing with local elections. Is there anything wrong with the president and the ruling party adopting certain tactical and strategic approaches with respect to the electoral process in our country? No. So long as it is not unconstitutional, so long as it's not illegal, one can maneuver tactically, strategically. I'm sure Adam would agree with this. It's all part of politicking, as they say. And it all depends on who comes out on top. There will always be allegations of misconduct, corruption, misuse of Parliament, abuse. All these things will be said, and that's the nature of the democracy. When Mr. Barack Obama made a presidential decree in respect of immigration, the House of Representatives and the Senate people were upset about him not taking it there so that they can, cogitate on it. But that was presidential prerogative. He did nothing wrong. He didn't do anything against the American Constitution or against the rules of the House or the Senate. And that happens all over the world. It happens all over the world. And I think the president made it very clear, and I admire this point that he makes, is that he has done nothing extra constitutional. This prorogation has not given him any extra powers. Like in some countries where they disband parliament or they provoke parliament and suddenly decrees are issued left, right, and center. It happened, but it's not happening here. It's not happening here. So I think we have to allow the Christmas season to pass, the New Year celebrations to pass, and the President will, at the appropriate time, he said early, well, I suppose somebody will hold him to that. Somebody will hold him to that. But why should we get upset if the President exercises, presidential prerogatives within the meaning of the Constitution and the laws of Guyana?
Final questions from me, sir. The President, one of the main reasons the President gave on Saturday for waiting, for announcing that he will announce the date, is that he doesn't want to spoil Christmas for Guyanese.
That's a wonderful statement, that's a very profound
I
statement.
understand, but why do
Very
you think
profound.
it being a
Christmas is
profound
serious
statement?
business in Guyana.
Exactly, but it being a profound statement, why do you think that the announcement of election would spoil Christmas for Guyanese? Do you expect violence?
The last thing I wanted is to get into the President's head as to why he thought that he should say that.
But you agreed with it. You said it's a profound statement.
That's the statement, but that doesn't mean to say I understand what the President was thinking when he said that. Oh, come on.
Then, let me take it down the road. Are you saying that GCOM is ready for the President to announce elections?
He didn't announce election.
No, but for him to have made an announcement of a date would have been to suggest that GCOM was ready to run.
No,
that date.
because Mr. Serge Bali, the chairman, has announced time and time again that once a date for elections are announced, whether it's local government or general or regional, and he has the time, he will be ready to hold elections. He said that only recently to the private sector, who had a meeting with him. So, that's the chairman's words.
Mr. Roy, last question. You had promised me to do some research on the Sun and Sand project. Sorry, the Sunset Lakes project.
Sun and Sand?
Sunset
Well,
Lakes.
I haven't gone to the beach for a very long time.
So you didn't check on it?
I didn't manage to do so. I've been so busy with so many other things.
Okay.
All right, thank you all.